The smell reached the darkness before anyone knew it had left the fire. Roasting meat, drifting past the edge of the light, out into the cold where the night began. Something out there caught it, lifted its head, and moved closer than it ever had before. A person sitting by that fire saw two eyes flash in the black. And instead of reaching for a stone, they reached for a bone and threw it into the dark. The animal took it. It came back the next night, and the night after that. The people around the fire watched it happen, and they let it happen. And when they moved camp, the shadow with the flashing eyes moved with them. Their children grew up knowing the shadow had a place at the edge of the light. Their children's children pulled it closer. That decision, made by someone whose name no one will ever know, was passed down through so many generations that it eventually reached you. There is a descendant of that shadow sleeping in a home on your street right now. Maybe in yours. You have probably heard the story of how dogs began. A hunter finds a wolf pup. He raises it. He tames it. He teaches it to obey. And the wolf becomes a dog. And the dog becomes man's best friend. It is a good story. It puts humans in charge from the very first moment. It is also almost certainly wrong. A grown wolf cannot really be tamed into a dog, no matter how young you catch it. People have tried, in modern times, with bottle-fed pups raised in human homes from their first days of life. The wolves stay wolves. They guard food from their owners. They test boundaries with their teeth. They can be socialized, but they never become safe, the way even a badly raised dog is safe. Whatever happened between humans and wolves, it was not one clever hunter with a pup and a plan. And here is the part that should really stop you. The hard problem was never the wolf. Wolves were dangerous, yes. But ancient humans lived surrounded by dangerous animals and handled them just fine, mostly by killing them or avoiding them. The real obstacle to the first dog was not the wolf's teeth. It was the human instinct to destroy competition. Wolves hunted the same prey humans hunted. They followed the same herds. They were rivals for every calorie on the landscape. And everywhere humans met rival predators, the usual outcome was a dead predator. The miracle is not that a wolf approached a fire. The miracle is that the people at the fire let it live. The first dog was not created by an act of domination. It was created by an act of tolerance that ran against every rule of survival. Think about what that tolerance actually cost. Every scrap thrown into the dark was food taken from human mouths, in a world where a bad month meant dead children. This happened during the last ice age, somewhere between 15 and 40,000 years ago, when winters in northern Eurasia could kill a healthy adult in a single night of bad luck. These were not people with calories to spare. They were people balanced on the edge of starvation, and some of them chose to feed a competitor anyway. Whatever they sensed in those eyes at the edge of the light, they judged it worth paying for in hunger. Why would anyone tolerate a rival predator at the edge of their camp? To answer that, you have to start with what was already built into both bodies long before either species made a choice. Your body carries a chemical called oxytocin. It is a bonding hormone, released when a mother holds her infant, when you embrace someone you love, when you feel that warm pull toward another living thing. It evolved to glue human families together. But it has a flaw, if you want to call it that. It is not picky. It can be triggered by anything with a big head, large forward-facing eyes, and clumsy, rounded movements. Anything that looks like a baby. Your brain floods with the urge to protect it, whether it is your child or not. Ancient humans could not switch that off. When a wolf pup tumbled into view, round-headed and wide-eyed, their bodies responded before their judgment did. Wolves carried their own hidden hardware. Every wild animal has what biologists call a flight distance. It is the invisible circle around the animal. And the moment anything frightening crosses that line, the animal runs. That distance is not learned. It is set in the nervous system, wired to stress hormones like cortisol, the chemical that screams danger through a body. And it varies from individual to individual, the way height varies in humans. Most wolves in the Ice Age had a wide circle. Humans meant death, and their bodies knew it from birth. But in every generation, a few wolves were born with a smaller circle. Calmer glands. Less cortisol. Nerves that let them stand 50 paces from a human camp, instead of 500, close enough to smell what was in the fire pit. Those calmer wolves found something the fearful ones never could. Humans were the messiest predators the world had ever produced. They killed animals far larger than themselves and left bones, skin, marrow, and scraps scattered around every camp. A human settlement was a slow, permanent feast for anything with the nerve to approach it. The bold, calm wolves ate. The nervous ones stayed hungry in the dark. Winter after winter, the calm ones survived at higher rates and bred with each other at the fringes of the human world. There was one more piece of hardware waiting in the human body, and it was hiding in plain sight: your eyes. Humans are nearly alone among mammals in having large, bright white areas around the iris, which makes the direction of your gaze visible from across a clearing. Human survival depended on reading each other's eyes, silently, instantly, during a hunt or a threat. Any animal that learned to read those same signals could tap directly into the human information network. Wolves at the edge of camp began doing exactly that, tracking where human eyes pointed. Because where human eyes pointed, food or danger followed. Their descendants would take it further still. Modern dogs follow a pointing finger and a shifted glance with an ease that chimpanzees, your closest living relatives, cannot match. Dogs even evolved a small muscle above the eye that wolves barely possess, a muscle whose main job is raising the inner eyebrow into that pleading, infant-like expression you have never once managed to resist. Their faces were literally resculpted to speak to yours. Nobody planned any of this. No wolf decided to become a dog. No human decided to make one. Two species were simply being pulled toward each other by chemistry and hunger, one scrap at a time. But biology only opened the door. What ancient humans did next is what walked through it, and you can trace their moves like steps in a long, unwritten experiment. The first move was the simplest one imaginable. They stopped throwing stones. A camp that tolerated the shadows at its edge got something in return almost immediately. Because wolves hear and smell everything, and wolves that live beside a camp start treating that camp's ground as their own. When a cave lion moved in the darkness, the wolves erupted before any human sentry knew a thing. The people at the fire did not need to understand why. They only needed to notice that camps with wolves at the edge got warnings, and camps without them got ambushes. Sleep came easier with the shadow on guard. The second move was harsher, and it is the one modern dog lovers do not like to think about. Ancient humans culled. A scavenger that snapped at a child, that raided the meat store, that showed its teeth at the wrong moment, was killed without hesitation. A calm one, a friendly one that wagged and groveled and kept its distance from the food, was left alone, maybe even fed. Generation after generation, human hands were quietly deleting aggression from the population at the camp's edge. They were breeding for temperament without ever knowing what breeding was. Every dead sharp-tempered wolf and every fed gentle one was a data point in an experiment no one knew they were running. The third move brought the animals inside the circle of firelight. Pups born at the edge of camp were picked up by children and carried home like toys. And in hunter-gatherer societies, documented in far more recent times, from the Amazon to Australia, women have been observed nursing orphaned puppies at the breast alongside their own infants. Read that again. Not feeding them scraps, nursing them. If people living traditional lives did this within the last 2 centuries, in front of astonished outsiders, there is little reason to think their ancestors were colder about it. A pup raised inside a human family, fed by human hands from its first weeks, imprinted on people the way it would have imprinted on its pack. It grew up believing, in whatever way an animal believes anything, that humans were its family. And the fourth move sealed the partnership. Somewhere along the way, humans realized the animal at their side was not just an alarm. It was a weapon. A wolf dog could follow a blood trail no human nose could detect. It could run down wounded prey across distances that would exhaust a man. It could hold a bear or a boar at bay, snarling and circling, until the spears arrived. A hunter with dogs came home with meat on days when a hunter without them came home with nothing. The partnership was no longer charity. It was an alliance between the two most relentless hunting species on the continent, and nothing, on 4 legs or 2, could stand against it. How far back does this alliance actually go? Further than farming, further than pottery, further than the wheel, writing, and every city that has ever existed. In 1914, quarry workers near Bonn, in Germany, uncovered a grave at a site called Oberkassel. Inside were the remains of a man of about 40, a woman in her 20s, and a dog. The grave is roughly 14,200 years old, which makes it the oldest undisputed burial of a dog anywhere on Earth, and the people who dug it chose to lay the animal down with their own dead. But the truly staggering detail took another century to surface. When the dog's teeth were re-examined in 2018, they showed the growth damage of canine distemper, a vicious viral disease that kills most untreated puppies. The pattern in the enamel showed the animal had survived multiple waves of illness, starting at about 19 weeks old. A puppy that's sick cannot feed itself. It cannot keep itself warm or clean. For weeks, through an ice age winter, someone had to have kept it alive by hand, hour after hour, with water and warmth and scraps of food. Here is what that means. A sick puppy could not hunt, could not guard, could not work. It was useless by every practical measure, and its people nursed it anyway. And when it finally died, they buried it in their own grave. 14,000 years ago, the partnership had already stopped being about usefulness. It was love. That is not a poetic exaggeration. It is the most reasonable reading of the bones. Still, one question hangs over all of it. Tolerating wolves, feeding the friendly ones, culling the vicious ones. Could that really transform a predator into a companion? Could simple selection for tameness reshape an entire animal? For most of history, that was unanswerable. Then a Soviet geneticist decided to run the whole process again from scratch, with witnesses. In 1959, at the Institute of Cytology and Genetics in Novosibirsk, Siberia, a scientist named Dmitry Belyaev began an experiment with silver foxes from fur farms. His team applied exactly one rule. Each generation, only the foxes least fearful and least aggressive toward humans were allowed to breed. Nothing else was selected. Not appearance, not intelligence, not obedience, just tameness. Within about 10 generations, fox pups were being born that whimpered for human attention, licked hands, and wagged their tails like puppies. And then something stranger happened. Something Belyaev had not selected for at all. The tame foxes began to change physically. Floppy ears appeared, curled tails, patches of white in their coats, shorter snouts, rounder faces. The genes that calmed their fear response were tangled together with the genes that shaped their bodies, so breeding for a gentle temperament dragged a puppy-like appearance along behind it. In a few decades, one man with one rule had recreated the outline of what Ice Age humans did across millennia around their fires. Nobody needed to plan the dog. Selecting for friendliness built it automatically, body and soul. Now, you might think that once the dog existed, its importance faded as humans grew more capable. Better tools, better shelter, eventually farms and cities and machines. Surely the partnership became optional. One of the most famous deaths in the history of exploration says otherwise. In 1911, two teams raced to be the first humans to reach the South Pole. Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian, built his entire plan around 52 sled dogs, animals whose partnership with humans stretched back into the ice his ancestors came from. Robert Falcon Scott, the British captain, gambled instead on ponies and experimental motor sledges, with men hauling their own sledges for the final push. The motors broke within days. The ponies died in the cold. Amundsen's dogs ran him to the pole on the 14th of December, 1911, and ran him home again. And he barely lost a man. Scott arrived 34 days too late, found Amundsen's flag already flying, and turned back into the Antarctic autumn, dragging his supplies with human muscle. He and his entire polar party died on the ice, the last of them just 11 miles from a supply depot. Two of the best-equipped expeditions of the modern age faced the same frozen desert. The one that trusted the ancient alliance lived. The one that abandoned it froze to death in a tent, writing farewell letters. The dog was never a luxury. For most of human history, and at the edges of the world even now, it was the difference between coming home and not coming home. And the animal never stopped changing to stay beside you. When humans eventually settled down and began growing grain, the meat scraps thinned out, and the leftovers turned to porridge, bread, and starch. A pure carnivore would have starved on that diet. Dogs did not. Their bodies quietly multiplied the genetic machinery for digesting starch, copy after copy, until many dogs could break down grain several times more efficiently than any wolf alive. Wolves stayed built for the hunt. Dogs rebuilt their own stomachs around the human dinner table. Every major turn in your species' story, from the ice to the campfire to the farm, is recorded somewhere in their blood. They did not just join human history, they agreed to be rewritten by it. So step back and look at what actually happened all those thousands of years ago. Two predators, competing for the same meat on a freezing continent, somehow ended up sharing a fire instead of a battlefield. Wolves offered their senses, their speed, and their loyalty. Humans offered food, warmth, and protection for the pups. Neither side could explain the arrangement. Both sides kept its terms anyway, generation after generation, until the terms were written into their bodies. The first dog was not an invention. It was a peace treaty between two species, and it is the only one in human history that has never been broken. And you are still holding up your end of it, whether you have ever thought about it or not. When a dog looks up and locks eyes with you, your body releases oxytocin, the same bonding chemical a mother releases gazing at her infant. The dog's body releases it too, in the same moment, from the same kind of gaze. No other animal on Earth shares that loop with you. Wolves do not do it, not even hand-raised ones. It exists only between your species and theirs, forged in the space beside a fire that went out more than 14,000 years ago. That warm pool in your chest, when a dog rests its head on your knee, is not sentimentality. It is an ice age signal, still transmitting. Every retriever, every street mutt, every tiny dog trembling in a handbag carries the bloodline of the shadow at the edge of the light. And you carry the other half of the agreement. The instinct to toss food to hopeful eyes. The reflex to soften your voice at a wagging tail. The strange, bottomless grief when one of them dies, out of all proportion to what any rival predator should deserve. Your ancestors nursed a dying puppy through an ice age winter for no reward at all. You would do the same tonight, and you know it. So tonight, if there's a dog near you, watch what happens when the lights go low. Somewhere in the room, two eyes will catch the lamplight and flash back at you out of the dimness, the same way two eyes once flashed at the edge of a fire. The person sitting by that fire had every reason to throw a stone. They threw food instead, and 14,000 years later, the shadow they fed is asleep on your floor, dreaming, twitching, absolutely certain that you are its family. It is right. Here is what I want to know from you. If you had been the one sitting at that fire, hungry yourself, with a rival predator's eyes shining in the dark, do you honestly think you would have thrown the bone or the stone? Be truthful with yourself, because your answer says something about you. Until then, take care of yourselves.